Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome again to Afghanistan by Afghans, where we introduce you to some amazing Afghans. I think I'm going to keep on saying amazing Afghans. I've been told I keep on repeating and using the same adjective for all my guests, but what can I do? They are all amazing. And today we're joined by yet another amazing person, Aman Mojadidi, who is a conceptual artist. I asked him what type of an artist he is, and because everybody likes a little more adjective to their artist. I had multidisciplinary artist, visual artist, and Aman John is a conceptual artist, but he's done a lot of cool work both in Afghanistan as well as Paris and the U.S. And I'm gonna explore and get right to it, so he can tell us all about his projects and life. So Aman John, first and foremost, welcome.
Thank you, Misaq. Thanks for asking me.
Of course. Of course. First, I love the whole background. You got so much art going on. It's like, you is this your office, playroom, kids room?
Kind of, yeah. This is sort of. It's in my apartment, but it's kind of my office studio space that I use. I have a sort of double living room kind of space. So I use half of it. I use the larger part for my office workshop. And I don't really paint, but I've been painting, and that's what's up on the wall around me lately. But I've been kind of inspired to just throw some paint on canvas lately. So yeah.
That's wonderful. I am trying to put down. Oh, there we are. Was looking for a show logo. There it is. So a beautiful painting. And are they all yours in the background?
Yeah.
Oh, they are. Wonderful. Okay, so we basically are getting. They don't have to go anywhere. Click on any of your links. They can see it all right then and there.
Yeah, there we go.
I know you're now in Paris, but you've kind of, lived in the U.S. as well as Afghanistan for a bit. So let's kind of start a little bit with history. What is your family or your own personal journey out of Afghanistan to where you are now?
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, my family left Afghanistan before all of the coups and the war started. Quite a long time before they left Kabul. So both my parents are from Kabul, and they left Kabul in 1967 and went to Jacksonville, Florida, where basically at the time the next older brother of my father's, my uncle, there was an exchange program with a university hospital in Jacksonville and Kabul Medical University, where American doctors were coming to Kabul to do some of their internship residency time, and Afghan doctors were going to Jacksonville. So my uncle got into this program. My father followed suit. And so actually my older brother, myself, and my sister, we were all born in Jacksonville. And I'm the only one who's ever actually gone to Afghanistan of the three siblings. And so I grew up and was raised in Florida and did part of my studies in Florida between Jacksonville and Gainesville. And then I completed my undergraduate degree and my master's degrees out in California, Southern California. Then moved to DC, and this is covering a long span of time. It wasn't like I did, right out of high school, 4 years. We're talking quite a long time before I finished the master's and ended up in DC for a brief time before I went and stayed in Kabul and lived in Kabul until from basically, I was going back and forth from 2001 to 2003, but from 2003-ish to 2013, I was pretty much living based in Kabul. And then since 2017.
Yeah. You definitely covered a whole span of time. I'm going to go back now. We're going to reverse.
You can dig back if you want.
We're going to go back. But yeah, let's start with kind of childhood, growing up in that space. And for our Afghan audiences, first of all, they may recognize your last name. And I know you may be related to Mojadidi, a politician in Afghanistan who became actually president for a while. Or you were related, right? If you wanted to clarify that too, or.
No, I am. He was Zindagi Saraj Basha. He was my father's oldest brother.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, your uncle, and he was president for how long was he there for?
Just a few months, huh? I
Few
mean,
months,
it
yeah.
was just, yeah. Then, they had this whole baton passing system in place, but then, and each person was supposed to, I think, have the presidency for like 6 months or something. But then his plane was attacked, and he ended up passing the baton earlier. And then, as we all know, then Rabani didn't give it up, and it all became everything that led to, the
Right,
civil
right.
war, kind of the civil war in the 90s.
Right, right. Yeah, I say that because maybe being a part of a political family and stuff may have something to do something with your art and childhood and upbringing and being conscious of world affairs and such perhaps. So how was kind of your childhood? Where did you grow up your first few years of life?
Um, Well, what was interesting about growing up in Florida, I mean, like a lot of Afghans who I think grew up outside of Afghanistan, my parents, my father in particular, was very much trying to make sure that we grew up Afghan, So I mean, we it was speaking Farsi in the house. We ate all the Afghan food. I mean, there was very much there was almost a sort of uh, almost a sort of desperation, a way of kind of keeping the culture, making sure that it didn't die out, on their part, which had its pros and cons, and so, but growing up in that part of the U.S., which is a very, very conservative, very, very racist part of the U.S., and so I grew up also. Obviously, I had lots of friends and stuff as well, but I also grew up getting into a lot of fights with kids. The expression in the southern U.S. For people who come from some country that is, Middle East, Central Asia, Near East, is a sand nigger.
Hmm.
And so I grew up being called this a lot, getting into fights with kids in school, calling me this, So I also grew up with this very strong sensation of, okay, well, I'm Afghan, right? I'm Afghan. Then I kind of adopted that identity before the American identity, until I actually set foot in Afghanistan for the first time, where I kind of then realized, okay, I am Afghan, but I'm not that kind of Afghan. So then I started to get into all of my explorations on identity and kind of what
Hmm.
it means to be kind of living with multiple cultures. So it was a very, very kind of normal suburban American childhood in some ways, but bombarded with all of these different kind of conflicts with racism and belonging and identity. So
That's yeah, an external, so an external
yeah,
force as well as an internal family as well. Yeah.
yeah.
And when it comes to art, when it came to art, what was like your first interactions with it? How were you introduced? What was the first type of art you were introduced to? Doesn't have to be what you're doing now, but art in general.
But I mean, I don't know if I can remember what I necessarily was the first art I was introduced to. What I can say, because I didn't study art, I studied anthropology, and I've
Hmm.
always been more interested in kind of cultural studies. But what I can remember is the first exhibition that I saw, which was a retrospective exhibition of the California artist Edward Kienholz, and I saw this exhibition in Southern California. So I was already well in my 20s by this time, But when I saw this exhibition and the work that he does, which is a lot of political commentary, social criticism, anti-capitalism, and he uses a lot of found objects and thrown away pieces that he puts together, skulls. And when I saw his work and the things that he was doing, I was like, I want to do that. I want to make things that can move you, like like Kienholz does. And so that's what led me into kind of making art in the first place.
Hmm.
And then eventually, once I finished my master's in anthropology, I ended up, rather than using anthropology to write papers and do things like that, I used anthropological methods and research methods and things to make artworks.
Hmm.
Actually,
Right,
yeah.
right. And we want to get into it because, of course, some of your projects, not some, all of them are amazing and great.
Mhm.
I want to highlight a few that were interesting to me. Let's start with some that you did in Afghanistan, maybe
Mhm.
perhaps because those are probably maybe lesser known, and what was possible and all the cool things you've done. But what was your first project when you went back to Afghanistan?
The first, well, I mean, I started when I was in Kabul. I started because I actually had then kind of stopped making art for a while. I ended up having this sort of crisis of creation because I was living in LA. I was making art, and me, I'm someone I very much like the process of making art. Like,
Hmm.
and the product at the end wasn't really that important to me when I first started creating. Um, but then I started to have some galleries be interested in my work and this and that. But then the galleries, they don't give a shit about your process. They want the product. They want the thing that they can sell at the end, right? And so I
Hmm.
started to have these crises of production. I'd be in the middle of making something and then thinking, they're not going to like this. The gallery's going to hate it, destroying it, mid production, and so I actually stopped making visual art for several years because I had this sort of crisis of production, and it wasn't until I was in Afghanistan where there was a lot of free time, you're at home a lot, that I started to, and it's for everything that it's not, Afghanistan is, and everything else that it is, but one thing it definitely is a kind of junk man's paradise. If you want to have found objects and all kinds of just amazing things and metal objects and pieces of this and pieces of that, you can find it, in Kabul. And so I started making like assemblage, found object art, little kind of sculptural pieces and different things like that, which is what I was making in the beginning when I first started making work in the first place.
Hmm.
And so, then in 2009 is when I really started to get into wanting to do kind of more public projects, and wanting to do projects that were really kind of starting to
Interactive.
address the issues and things that were going on in Afghanistan. And so Payback, which I think you mentioned earlier, this where we set up a fake checkpoint on the streets dressed as policemen, stopped cars, checked their papers, and rather than asking them for bribes, we gave them money back before sending them on their way, and we had hidden cameras. So the final piece was kind of a video installation with multiple monitors and whatnot. But yeah, so that was kind of the beginning. I think one of the first kind of major projects that I did there that was looking at some of the social issues and social complications happening there.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was beautiful. And was that by any way related to your? Perhaps you did this one earlier, where you had yourself in all bling with
That was
women in
after. So I
burqa.
did that after
Okay.
Payback. Yeah, yeah. So then
Right,
that
right.
was
Because
that was
that
that was
one.
another series. Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
yeah,
tell us about that one.
yeah.
Yeah, that.
So that one, yeah, that was basically what became interesting for me after a while in Kabul. Also, was hearing a lot of people talk about particularly the jihad of the '80s, against the former Soviet Union. There was, everyone would be talking about like how they did jihad, and so they deserve X, Y, and Z, and so they deserve this position or they deserve that or that or that, and I started to, as people would tell me this, more and more people that I would meet and come across, or the children of people who did jihad in the '80s, against it, I started to visualize their words almost as like a sort of bling. Like jihad was their bling. They were wearing their jihad like these big bling necklaces. I did jihad, so check me out. It was this status thing, that they were trying to portray, and so whether it was grounded in anything real or not, and so, or legitimate or not. And um, and so when I started to think about that, basically first I created an installation where I found a bunch of different objects and I made these bling necklaces out of different things that I worked with a jeweler to kind of gold wash, the exploded part of a little anti-personnel mine, a pistol, a ball of barbed wire, and I made these big, gold chain necklaces out of this. Made this conflict bling and kind of displayed them in these nice glass jewelry cases at a underground show I did. I was doing these pop-up shows in Kabul back in 2009, 2010. 2011. And so then I started to think, okay, well, conflict bling, well, who would be wearing this kind of conflict bling, right? So then that's when I started to think about the jihadi gangster. And so that's when then led to this kind of series of a day in the life of a jihadi gangster, where there's kind of 5 pictures in the series of, different points in the day: morning prayer, dressing for work, phone negotiations, where there's a Westerner who seems he's a kidnapped Westerner, has a pistol to the back of his head, and I'm laughing on the phone with my head cocked back, which in Kabul, that at that time, images like that were very reminiscent of the kind of telecommunications billboards that you would see around town, where, Roshan Nazdik Shadan, and everyone is there laughing with their head cocked back on the phone. So there were also these very local references that people from the outside wouldn't necessarily catch. And so then that character culminated in a run for parliament, because again, speaking to people, hearing taxi drivers point out, you see that candidate? That guy was affiliated with so-and-so warlord who killed 20 people in my village. Oh, you see that candidate? She's the sister of so-and-so, And so I started to say, so the jihadi gangster would be a parliamentarian, like if he would at least run for parliament, if not for something more. So I made these fake campaign posters that I ended up putting up on the walls in Kabul. So it was me wearing the conflict bling, but I had my face blacked out, and inside the black circle was written, Jihadi Dil Khwai Shama, your favorite jihadi here, to let people just insert whatever image they had. My slogan was, I've done jihad, vote for me, I've done jihad and I'm rich. And so we basically wheat pasted these around town. I had some friends helping me with that, and so that was the end of that kind of character development. Kind of ended with that failed run for parliament, let's say.
Well, it can make a comeback now. There, right now, right? with the current crisis, of course. And you're the perfect fit, I think, to make have that sort of commentaries, having your family kind of been involved in politics or the cultural sort of space. Were there other people in your family who were involved in art and cultural activities before yourself?
No. Most of my family was telling me that I needed to stop what I was doing because I was shaming the family.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah, exactly. You're the second Mojadidi who gets the press, and for different reasons. Yeah.
Exactly. That was actually what was something quite. For my own ego, I found it to be quite funny, So after my uncle passed away, there were some articles, little brief articles that came out, about his passing and whatnot, and someone sent me a couple of them. And what was interesting was in these very brief little things about Sibghatullah Mujadidi, former this, former that, passed away, but within those very brief little articles, they would also then mention, me as his nephew, visual artist, conceptual artist, whatever, Afghan-American artist, the nephew of blah, blah, blah. And I always found it quite funny because these other members of the family, my uncle never told me I should stop. He only told me once that I should be careful because I could get myself in trouble. That's what he told me. We had a very kind of particularly special relationship, I feel like, with him. But the other members of my family, I had to control my blossoming ego to not send them all these articles and say, you all wanted me to stop, but look, they don't mention you in this article. They don't. So I had to, let my ego just kind of, do its thing to myself and let it go, but it made me really proud, because I do feel like he and I had a particular understanding with each other that a lot of others in the family, including his own children and people around him, didn't quite understand, I think.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. And that I thought, like, kind of a lot of, when I looked at those 2-3 pieces, I was like, yeah, this is definitely, you have some insight. You have to have those sort of conversations with family or others who are in that political space, socio-political space, to be able to make such interesting commentaries that are raw and so engaging.
Yeah.
both those pieces. And I'm wondering if you're doing anything socio-political commentaries right now.
At the moment, I'm not. There's been a kind of a big shift in my own kind of creative practice, that whereby a lot of these last years where I've been getting a lot into different kinds of healing modalities like breath work and things like that. Also, shamanic practices and shamanic voyaging and all these kinds of things. Trance dancing, different states of trance, and actually, and so for a while, I was curious to see how those different things would start to influence my work. But what I'm realizing more and more, or what I've come to realize over time now, is that all of these activities, like I lead shamanic trance dance sessions twice a month here in Paris. I do guide people on shamanic voyaging. I myself do different kinds of activities within that realm, breathwork stuff. I've realized that all of that has actually become my creative practice, actually. And so it's very much gone more into kind of the spiritual realm rather than the political realm, I guess. So to speak. Yeah. So at the moment, I'm not, in terms of the visual arts. No, I do have one short story that I actually wrote several years ago, but that it was supposed to be part of a edited volume on contemporary art in global Asia. So they invited different people to contribute. Each person would have a chapter basically devoted, that they would contribute something. And interestingly, at the time, the publisher got bought out by another publishing house, and then there was all these issues with that publishing house, and so it never got published. And now, just late last year, so after August of last year, one of the editors, the main editor, reached out and was saying, okay, so we finally got a new publisher who's going to publish this edited volume. So if you have any updates to make to your pieces, send them in. And what I had proposed was a sort of experimental short story where there was this kind of fictionalized country in the near future based on Afghanistan. But within that story, there's different kind of topics or issues that come up, and then they have footnotes. So it's a fictional story, but with footnotes, basically. And the footnotes are factual information about migration, about identity, whatever the subject might be within the story that comes up in the conversation of the characters. Then some of it gets footnoted. But the story is about a young group of artists who are still left in a country called the Republic. And the country is really deteriorating, and they contact a curator that they know who lives and works in the lands of the West, and asks her to help them get out, help them come to the lands of the West for a residency or something. And they confide in her that they don't plan on going back to the Republic. And so she helps them, and asks them each to bring a little something that reminds them of home, a little thing, a little object. And so, long story short, they end up at the museum in the lands of the West with the curator. And the curator takes them to the room where they'll be working for their residency, and there's these plinths in there. There's 4 of them, and there's 4 plinths. And she says, each of you have 1 plinth, put it in the part of the room where you're going to be working over the next few months. And so as they're all talking, they hear the door close and lock in this room. And then on the 4 sides, the walls come down halfway on the 4 sides. And it's glass, it's window. And on the outside, there's all these people coming in dressed in black, holding champagne and wine glasses. And in fact, the artists themselves are what's on exhibit. It's not what they do. It's them. And it's my commentary on the way in which kind of the Western art world views artists from countries like Afghanistan or other countries in the global South. It very much like these curators are kind of like the new anthropologists bringing back the new noble savages discovering the new noble savages, which are the artists in war countries and these things, and exhibiting them. And it's very much what's happening with a lot of the artists and the cultural people that have been evacuated since August, where the work that they're doing is actually less in the spotlight as them. They're the ones that are being spotlighted, not their work. And so it's actually quite fitting now that the piece is going to get published now. So I did a little bit of an update, just kind of, clarifying also that this was written, basically 5-6 years ago, and yet now is actually speaking very much to a socio-political subject that's happening right now. And
very timely.
Yeah, it ended up just kind of, unintentionally, but yeah. So, there's, I'm still at it, just in different ways, I guess I should say.
Your the spiritual transition or next step in your creative expression is definitely another conversation. I would love to have that conversation because even your website refers to the 7 states of being, looking into Sufism
7-level
and
living.
even Hindu. 7 levels of what?
7-level living.
7-level living, exactly. And you look into all these different practices, but that's definitely a different conversation. I would love to have that with you, even off camera. But I wanted to talk about a little bit on the art and in terms of curation, and follow up that you were curating or just recently curated that show. How did that come into being, and are you one of the guys inside the room of your own story? On exhibition.
I have been inside the room and responsible for the room, I feel like, at different times. So that's been part of my own kind of struggle, because at the same time, you want to raise awareness, you want people to know what's going on, you want people to see what's happening, you want people to hear what people, artists have to say. I don't like to say giving them voice, because when we say giving them voices, it's as if they couldn't talk, until we showed up, but providing platforms through which people can actually hear what they're saying, and what they've actually probably been saying for years and years. So I curate. That happened. It was with the Imago Mundi Foundation, and I've done some work with. I've curated some books for them as part of this other project of theirs, which are essentially kind of country profiles. And each country, there's basically a publication that's done for each country, and there's people who curate the artists that are in that publication. So they had contacted me. I was working on an installation for a Biennale in India in 2012 when I got a call from them asking me to curate their publication for Afghanistan. So I ended up doing that in 2013. And then in 2015 and 16, I also did Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka for them. And so I had this background with them. And so they actually, after everything that happened last August, part of this spectacle, everyone wanted to do something for Afghanistan, suddenly, it's like, well, where were you 5 years ago? We also needed you then, not just now, but well. And so I was asked if I wanted to curate an exhibition. And so, so I did, I struggled with the idea for a little while. I wasn't sure if I wanted to, but then I kind of tried to make the exhibition also not just focused on kind of evacuated artists and this and that. So there was a recently evacuated artist, Afghan artist. There was an Afghan artist who left Afghanistan some years ago and was based in France. There was a Mexican artist who did a project in Afghanistan. There was an Afghan artist who's been living in California for many years, finished her master's, and another one from Canada. So I tried to have more of a range also of who was in it. So even though it was a time when Afghanistan was hot again and everyone wanted to do something with Afghanistan, I tried to make the exhibition something that was more than just a reaction to the evacuation and to everything that happened, but that was more of a kind of more of a tempered response to what was happening. So and I'm in the process now of working on another book with a couple of other curators for the Imago Mundi Foundation. that also includes Afghan artists, but not just Afghan artists. So
that's wonderful. Yeah,
yeah,
that's wonderful. Well, a lot of
well,
amazing work, Amanjan. Yeah, we'll put links to that exhibition. That's what kind of initiated or inspired this conversation. But I think that exhibition happened already, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it already happened. We were in touch way before it, and when you first just started, but it's been a while till we got to
Yeah.
connect.
It happened.
Uh,
I guess it was November, from November to January.
yes,
It
yeah,
ran. Yeah,
there we
yeah.
go.
The Katra Katra. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
drop
yeah,
by drop or drop.
yeah.
How was it
Yeah,
received?
and I'll send you.
How
I
was it
actually did a
received?
talk the other day. I'll send you the link. There's like a YouTube. I think they posted it up on YouTube. I did a talk for UC Berkeley on kind of ethnography and social art as well.
Hmm.
And that's really then goes. I'm going through my artworks and talking very much about my artwork. So it's very much geared on my practice specifically with images and whatnot. So I can send you that too if you wanna
Definitely.
share.
We'll link it up. Yeah, I didn't want to go too much into each piece by piece because you have done your TED Talk also just goes very
Yeah,
well, gives some great
yeah.
pictures.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be a little more personal, kind of dig in a little
I like that.
deeper.
I appreciate that. I don't get to do that very often, so it's nice to just have a very informal conversation rather than saying, "Oh, I
Yeah.
did this and I did this and I did this." It gets
I
quite
did-
boring.
yeah, they can look that up on Wikipedia. But
Exactly.
so I thank you so much, Anjan, for being here and
Thanks, Lee.
giving your time. I know it's evening in Paris, and I'm glad your kid did not come through. Well, I'm not glad actually. I was, we want those moments, right? You were afraid of that. So I thank you very much for being on the show, and wish you best of luck with future art projects, and look forward to more.
Thanks, Misaq. Likewise, man. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Yep.